Okay, thank you so much. It's a real pleasure being here. I just got back from China actually 2 days ago. I'll tell you about those experiences as well. I'll talk to you about superhuman AI for strategic reasoning under imperfect information. And in particular, I'll talk about how we beat the top heads-up no-limit Texas Hold'em players first here in Pittsburgh, and then I'll talk about experiences in China. I'm a professor here in computer science and also a founder and CEO of Strategic Machine, which is commercializing these technologies, and this is joint work with Noam Brown, my PhD student. So when we tackle imperfect information games, the techniques for games like Go, chess, checkers, and tic-tac-toe don't apply, because whenever it is our turn to move, we don't know the exact state of the world. And the techniques I'll talk to you about are application independent. So although the benchmark that I'll talk to you about is poker, these are really not techniques for poker. They could be applied to basically any incomplete information game. The main challenges here are, first of all, uncertainty about what others and chance will do, unknown state, and because there's unknown state, we have to think about how do our actions signal to the opponent or opponents about our private information? And conversely, how do the opponent's actions signal to us about the opponent's private information? And this is where the concept of Nash equilibrium from game theory comes in. So John Nash invented this concept in 1950, and it really transformed all of economics and many other sciences. And in 1994, he got the Nobel Prize for that work. But of course, that is just a definition of what rational play is when you have more than one player. It doesn't actually do anything. So to operationalize that, you have to marry it up with algorithms to actually compute strategies according to Nash equilibrium. All right, and most real-world settings are actually like this. Typically, there are more than one player, and you don't have complete information. So that's why I founded Strategic Machining to commercialize these technologies. It's a CMU spin-out. Applications of this include negotiation, both at the consumer level and business to business, business strategy optimization, strategic pricing. So for example, most pricing, even if it's optimized today, is optimized as if you're a monopolist or as if the other competitors' prices are fixed. Here, instead, we take a strategic view. Areas of finance, like upstairs blocks trading, auctions, next generation cybersecurity, political campaigns, military applications, and so forth, and also a kind of a radical application that we're working on, which is steering evolution and biological adaptation strategically, for example, for treatment planning. And there we're looking at viral and bacterial infections and how to fight them, as well as how to steer a patient's own T-cell population so as to fight cancers and autoimmune diseases. And of course there are lots of other applications as well. And this is in contrast to games of complete information, which really have very few real-world applications. Now, while these techniques are domain independent, the canonical benchmark for these is poker. And if you are careful and go back to John Nash's 1950 PhD dissertation, you will find that the one and only application therein was poker. Since then, there's been a lot of work, steady progress on poker, and the field really took off around 12 years ago. And there was the annual computer poker competition organized by the Association for the Advancement of Artificial Intelligence, which was announced in 2005 and started in 2006. And that has really enabled the different research groups around the world to compare their results, build on each other's results, and compare progress year to year. And what that has led to is a multiple orders of magnitude scalability improvement in this core technology for reasoning. And so much so that it has qualitatively changed what game theory can do. It largely used to be a thinking tool where you have small models, try to manually think through them, while now it's possible to take all of the detail in the domain into account and solve these computationally. So Heads Up No Limit Texas Hold'em, in particular, has become the main benchmark and challenge problem for AI for imperfect information games. It's a very large game. It has 10 to the 161 different situations that the player can face. So let's stop to think about that number for a second. It's more than the number of atoms in the universe. And furthermore, if you had for each atom in the universe a whole other universe and computed the number of those subatoms, it's still more than that too. So there's no way you are going to store these games or to brute force through them. You need AI techniques to solve them. And no prior AI has been able to beat top humans. So if you think about game playing in AI, there's been great successes. For example, in Othello, checkers, chess, and Go. But Heads Up No Limit Texas Hold'em has really remained elusive. It is a tough game because it's both very large and it's a game of imperfect information. So this January, I organized this Brains versus AI rematch. And why I call it the rematch is that I had organized a similar competition in April and May 2015, and we could not beat the best humans at this game back then. Now here, I invited 4 of the top 10 Heads Up No Limit Texas Hold'em specialist pros to Pittsburgh to play. Here we have Don Kim, Jason Les, Jimmy Cho, and Daniel McCauley. They're all from different countries, so this is really the international elite of this game. We played 120,000 hands of poker over 20 days, and the players played for a purse of $200,000. So I raised the money, so we couldn't win anything. The money was going to go to the humans. But we didn't just give each of them 50,000. Rather, we had them pay out based on how well they did against Libratus, which was our AI. So they had an incentive to play very seriously all the way to the end. More than this money, they had the pride of mankind on their shoulders, and they took it very, very seriously. Every night they were studying, they brought in computers, standard programs for studying poker, custom programs that they had made for studying poker, IT consultants, other Heads Up No Limit Texas Hold'em pros flew to Pittsburgh, and they really took this very seriously. So this is what it looked like. This is Rivers Casino in Pittsburgh. Having fun with Jason Les here. It's actually great fun to look at how this program plays. It plays very differently than humans play, because it doesn't start by learning from human data. It starts from just the rules of the game. So it figures its own strategy using optimization and AI techniques. So it plays very differently than how humans think poker should be played. So here's Jason thinking. And the final result was that Libratus, which was our AI, beat the top humans in this game by a lot. Specifically by 147 millibig blinds per hand. This was statistically significant at the 99.98% level, and also each human individually lost to Libratus. So then, just last week, we did a similar event in China, in Haikou. And we played 36,000 hands against a team of 6 Chinese poker pros. We played for 2 million RMB, winner takes all. The opponents were very well prepared. So not only were they expert poker players, but they were also computer scientists and machine learning experts. And they had, one of them was the one and only Chinese World Series of Poker bracelet winner. And they studied Libratus' hand histories in advance in order to try to break the AI. We played for 4.5 days in 9 sessions. Well, their strategy didn't work. Lempudashi, which means cold poker master, it's a Libratus' Chinese brother, if you will, won by 220 milligigabytes per hand, so even more than in January. And it won each one of the 9 sessions, and it also beat each of the individuals when considered not as a team, but as individuals. All right, so how does Libratus and Lempudashi, how do they work? I get this question a lot. So now I'm going to give you a whirlwind tour about what's behind these AIs. So they all have 3 main modules. There's more, but these are the main pieces. One is that what happens before the event. We feed the rules of the game to an abstraction algorithm. It finds an abstraction of the game, solves for Nash equilibrium approximations thereof. Then there's an endgame solver that kicks in during the play of the hand to refine the strategy in real time. And then there's a self-improver which runs in the background. I'll talk about each one of these 3 pieces. So ahead of the event, we run on a supercomputer, and in the case of Libratus, we ran about 15 million core hours on the supercomputer called Bridges at the Pittsburgh Supercomputing Center. Then, obviously, the game is too big to solve directly, so we run an abstraction algorithm to come up with a smaller abstract game. Then we use a custom equilibrium finding algorithm to find an approximate equilibrium of that game, and then we reverse map the answer back to the original game. The abstraction algorithm, well, we don't need to go to the details. It is the same abstraction algorithm essentially that we used for a prior bot called Tartanian 8, Tartanian for Tartan for CMU, and this was the 8th version thereof. The main ideas behind that are imperfect recall abstraction, potential aware abstraction, and earth mover distance as a similarity metric, if you know what those mean. Here you solve for a much finer grained abstraction because we have a better equilibrium finding algorithm that enables that through better scalability. So for the first 2 betting rounds, we had no card abstraction, and then for the 3rd and 4th betting rounds, we had some card abstraction, but by the time we get there, the endgame solver will kick in, so we will never actually play into a point in the game where we don't have a perfect understanding of the cards. All right, so the new equilibrium finding algorithm is an improvement of an algorithm called Monte Carlo counterfactual regret minimization, and the new innovation there for us is that we start visiting less often paths where our own actions don't look promising. And this leads to a speed up and allows us to solve larger abstractions. It also mitigates the downsides of imperfect recall abstraction. All right, then let's talk about the endgame solver, which kicks in during the play of the hand. And this is, I would say, the most novel part of the architecture. The new ideas here, just in one slide. One is we do safe endgame solving, taking into account the opponent's mistakes so far. Safe means that we can guarantee, we can prove that the endgame solver strategy is no worse than the strategy that was pre-computed. And the gifts mean that for every possible private information that the opponent might have, we can see how much of a mistake would it have been from the opponent to play the way they did, given that private information. Of course, we don't know the private information, but we can do this computation for all possible private information that the opponent might have. And then we can afford to give back in the endgame to the opponent as much as the opponent has made in mistakes so far in the hand. This allows us to have a bigger space of strategies to optimize over in the endgame. Nested endgame solving, this is another difference to prior approaches where previously when you hit to the endgame, you solve it and then you play according to your strategy. Here, we actually resolve the endgame every time the opponent makes a move, so we have a better understanding of the opponent's moves and we can afford to do it in a more refined way. The endgame starts already on the 3rd betting round. In prior approaches, it was only on the last, which is 4th betting round. And we don't have any card abstraction in the endgame, so the AI has a perfect understanding of the cards at the endgame. And then here's a little extra nasty trick that I came up with, which is that given that we are going to solve the endgame anew every time anyway, we can actually change the action abstraction, the bet sizing, and put some randomization in there every time before we solve. So this changes the betting abstraction every time, and the bet size is at the human's face. So the humans have a tough time here. Either they have to solve for their strategy anew for every hand, or they are going to give us small slices of value all the time. So now, let's see if the videos work. I'd like to play you a video about what Daniel Macaulay says about Libratus's balance and use of blockers. If you know what those poker terms are, that's good. If not, that's fine. And Daniel Macaulay is one of the 2 or 3 people in the world who will agree to play anybody in this game. So if you go to PokerStars, for example, he will be there waiting for you. Okay, let's see if we can get the videos to work. And by the way, at least one of these 4 videos is going to include some swearing, so I apologize in advance.
In contrast to the first challenge, there was a lot of hands the first time around where the bot really just punted one off. I've seen way less of that. So what are your thoughts? How good is the bot?
It's pretty good. I mean, well, I'm losing, so if I consider myself pretty good, then it must be pretty good. But there's not really any punting. Like, I think it uses blockers well and the bluff spots. Like, I've not really picked up on anything that's too obvious one way or the other. So I'm genuinely impressed. Yeah, it's pretty good.
And here, you should notice that this bluffing and blockers is not something we programmed in. The AI figured those strategies on its own. Okay. So the last piece in the architecture is a self-improver, where we are looking at, instead of trying to learn mistakes in the opponent's strategy and exploiting them, like we typically do in computer poker in my group and other groups, instead we wanted to do the exact opposite. We felt that there are very few mistakes to exploit in these top pros, and they are experts at counter-exploiting. So it would be very risky to try to do that. Instead, we looked at what holes in our strategy have the opponents been able to identify and exploit, and then in the background, we would fill in those holes. So here's how it works. Let's say we have these blue solid lines in our betting abstraction to start out with. Then the opponent might actually bet some size that's not in the abstraction. Let's say those dotted lines. We automatically prioritize those based on how close these are to the actions that are in the model and how often they are used. So let's say that's the worst one. Then we are going to make an endgame where we have this in the endgame action abstraction and some default action, and we are going to freeze the strategy from here that we pre-computed, and we are going to recompute the strategy for this part, and then we are going to keep just this response to this action. This way we can fill the holes in the background automatically. So let's see what Jason and Jimmy say about the holes.
The energy level was super high the first few days. We start off in the hole, kind of expected as we're figuring out what's going on, and then we climbed all the way back to basically nearly even, and we are like, we're in this, we have a chance. And we had like key strategy ideas, key things we were pushing against the AI. And then, I guess the wheels kind of just came off the wagon, and it wasn't that our play fell apart, in my opinion. I think we've really seen a clear improvement in the AI strategy day to day to day.
Okay. Libratus was actually a big improvement over Baby Tartanian 8, which is our AI that won the most recent annual computer poker competition. And it was about 80 to 100 millibig price per hand, better than that. Strengths, well, it makes tiny bets, huge all-ins. These are moves that humans don't make. It has what the pros call perfect balance. In reality, it's not exactly perfect because it's an approximate Nash equilibrium. It does mixed strategy-based thinking, not just range-based. It does donk betting, which is considered a bad move in all poker books. So it's actually uncovering new kinds of poker strategy. And as we said, no card abstraction in parts that are played, probably near perfect endgame play, and different bet sizing used in different endgames. Weaknesses, you could argue that it's a weakness that we don't try to do opponent exploitation, but against these top pros, maybe that's not even what you want to do. Maybe that's more against weak players. And one interesting point that I get asked a lot is that this bot plays this safe kind of poker in the sense that it's Nash equilibrium. It's essentially unbeatable, or if it were an exact Nash equilibrium, it really would be unbeatable. So is this safe play somehow timid or boring? Let's see what Dong and Dan say about that. Okay, so that's what Bill Gates has to say about that. Oh man. Okay. So we won't play the last video. You'll just have to take my word for it that they thought it played well. It really plays a very aggressive, forceful form of poker, and it plays these moves that people don't usually play. So it's very fun to play against. All right, and last slide. So what are we currently working on in the lab? Well, many things, but here are some examples from this project in my lab. So we're developing practical lossy abstraction algorithms that have bounds on solution quality. And these can actually be used not just to abstract in order to buy time for solving, rather they can also be used for modeling. So if we can think about the difference between not the abstraction and the game, but the real world and the game, now we can actually apply the same types of provable bounds on how good our strategies will be in the real world. And this is the first time that's been done. Then new kinds of equilibrium finding algorithms instead of ones based on counterfactual regret minimization, new gradient-based ones that are actually faster, algorithms for equilibrium refinements, understanding the exploration, exploitation versus exploitability trade-off. So in AI there's this explore-exploit trade-off, and when you have games, there's also the third dimension, which is how much are you becoming exploitable as you start to exploit the opponents more. And turns out that a trade-off doesn't start from zero. You can actually exploit to an extent beyond game theory and still be completely safe yourself. And then additional applications, and that's what we're doing at Strategic Machine. Thank you.